welcome back to part 3 of our relationship series. We had the privilege of being here, was it 2 weeks ago?
Mm-hmm.
And we got to talk about sex and relationships. And some people asked us some questions, some follow-up questions, so we're going to go through them together today. But we just want to say before we do that these answers are based on our previous experiences and our opinions, and they are grounded in scripture to the best of our ability.
Yep.
But we also know that everybody listening has a mind and a brain, and we want you guys to apply yourselves too and think about our answers. Don't take them necessarily as truth. Look into them yourself. And we're really hoping that we can provide some insight for you. And also, if you guys have any questions for us, we really wish that we were having a one-on-one conversation with you right now, and it isn't as much of a discussion. We're going to try and give some helpful tips and pointers and answers, but if you have any follow-up questions for us or any comments, we actually would love to talk to you. So you can just DM Southside Youth or Southside Church, and you can get connected with us that way. So we're going to go through some questions, and Maddie is going to guide us through them. So take it away, Maddie.
All right. So the first question reads, for those who are married, how did you know he was the one?
Ooh, the one.
Cute and Tori.
You too.
Us too.
You want me to go first?
I can go first.
Okay, go.
So I met Josh. Was I like 24 when I met Josh? I think I was. Yeah. So I was working full time at the church, and I told the story last week, but like I just feel like Josh came out of absolutely nowhere. So honestly, like I just knew from the beginning that there was something like different about like even meeting him. I just feel like we hit it off right away. Like we had very similar senses of humor, which is important to me.
Yeah.
Because like Breanna said last week, like something my mom always says is it's a 6-year conversation.
Yeah,
so
cool.
I just felt like from the first time we talked, I was like, I just have so much fun talking to him.
Yeah.
Which is so important. Please don't date people that you don't like talking to.
Yeah.
Guys. Goodness gracious.
Amen.
But the first thing that kind of comes to my mind is for me, I just sort of felt like I like knew my goals. I had a solid relationship with God. I wasn't really looking to like go through massive struggles with someone, if that makes sense. Like something that's always been really important to me is like, it sounds cliche, but I just never wanted someone to like change for me. And like one of the things that like really stood out to me right away about Josh is he was a very new Christian when I met him, but he had already like gone through so many steps of like life change, and it was before we even met. So I just like could see how genuine he was about his relationship with God. And like that was really cool for me because I don't know, I just think when you're dating somebody, obviously there's going to be things like, and Josh and I went through some stuff like very early on in our relationship. Josh struggles with anxiety, so that was something that we kind of struggled with at first, just figuring out how that kind of plays into our relationship. But he knew that God came first, and like I wasn't the one that he went to with all of his big things. Like he already sort of knew where he wanted his life to go. He knew what he wanted to change, and that was like such a good sign for me because I was like, I just feel like we're going in the right direction, and we're going in the same direction. So for me, it was just like a bunch of little things like that where he just showed me that he was so teachable and humble. And those two things I think are really important, especially like honestly in a relationship with someone else and in a relationship with God, to be able to easily admit when you make a mistake. I think makes a relationship flow a lot easier. I think you can run into trouble when you just have such a hard time admitting. Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Such a hard time admitting if you did something wrong. And he was just always so humble and kind and teachable from the very beginning. So I don't know. It's hard to, I just think I just knew we wanted similar things in our life. He loved me for exactly who I was. I never needed to change anything about myself. And I think that's really,
cool.
really important.
That is so true.
So that's me.
Wow, that's cool. It's funny because like I feel like we wanted very similar things. We are related, which is funny, but like I also wanted someone that was kind, and I feel like that was something that I found in Vigeli like right away. But it's interesting because like Tori talked about how like her and Josh were kind of in the phases of life where they had like the big things figured out, and I feel like I met Vigeli when I was 19. And I feel like we did not have anything figured out, like anything figured out at all. Like when I think like we were together 4 years, like we are together. We have been together for 4 years.
Currently still married.
Still married, yeah. But it's just funny because we went through so much change, like both of us. And I think the thing that really like held us together was his kindness.
Yeah.
The fact that he, was always so supportive, and like I really struggle with anxiety and he does as well. And I feel like usually I remember people would say like, oh, it's so bad that you both like struggle with anxiety. Like you need one person to like stabilize you. And I think that can be true in some cases, but like for him and I, it was like we both kind of journeyed together and we were like each other's safe place. So it was like, I don't know. It's just so interesting when you get to know someone really well and they struggle with mental health. I don't know. It's just really special to have someone that's your safe place.
Yeah, totally.
And I think like that is what Vigeli was and is to this day for me. And I would say that I'm the same thing for him. And so I think that's like the one thing that drew me to him was it was first like how kind his heart was. And then it was like, I am just like fully at peace, like when I'm with you. I think that,
that
that's
is
a short description of the wild ride that was our 4 years. But yeah, I don't know. I think that would be.
No, that was really good.
But I think too, sorry, I'm not married, obviously, but when I look at your guys' marriages, like you both are with people who you have a lot of fun with.
Yeah.
And they're like a safe place, like you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people who are single, they're wondering, like, can you have both?
Oh, interesting.
And so, like, for me, like, when I look at, like, your marriages, I'm like, okay, well, there's a very
That's a
clear
good point.
example of
Yeah.
both.
Yeah. That's actually so true too. Like even I remember I'm very lucky to have really strong friendships. And I remember always comparing my relationship with my friendships. And I think that was something like that I was very blessed with the fact that I could have a best friend and a boyfriend and then husband. Do you know what I mean? Does that make any sense?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I love that. Okay, so the second question reads, will God still bless your relationship when you've broken his heart by sexual acts?
Okay, yeah. Like that question, I think is in a lot of people's minds, in the back of their minds,
No
and
kidding.
something that keeps them from God. So I would just first and foremost like to say, yeah, definitely. Like you have not sinned beyond the redemptive power of Jesus. Like the God that we talk about, believe about, sing about, preach about is a God who literally went to the cross and took everything that we could have ever done and took it to the grave and rose again. And so nothing is too powerful for that because he literally defeated all of that.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to you and your relationship with Jesus, like you can be made new. And it says in the Bible, like his mercies are new every morning.
Yeah.
And so it's not like, no, you did one thing and this is cursed forever. And so I think what this person is asking is like, first and foremost, am I beyond, like, have I sinned beyond the redemptive power of God? And the answer would be no.
Yeah.
But then two, like, if it's relational, that's two different people. And so if they're asking like, can I still like live a blessed life in this relationship with God? I think it would be, where is that other person at?
Yeah.
And so if you, so if you're on a journey towards God and you want to have God's plan at the center of your relationship, does the other person want that?
Yeah.
Because that's going to be a really big issue. And I know like even working here, like talking to Pastor Mike, who like, or any of our pastors here who do marriage counseling, sometimes like they're talking to married or engaged couples who are about to get married, and they talk about like, like we've had premarital sex, like can we still get married? And oftentimes, no, every time, when this couple like wants to get married and go through with it, his advice to them is like, okay, well, like start now. His mercies are new every morning. You can stop having sex right now. You can put up new boundaries. And you can experience that blessed life. And so God's mercies are new every morning. And nothing's too big for that.
I remember in one sermon that Mike gave, he talked about the well-worn path between us and God. And I just thought it was so cool. It was basically talking about how we always wander away from God. Like sexual sin, any kind of sin, you wander from God. And that path between us and him and going back to him and his plans for us is supposed to be well worn. And so I think sometimes we have this all or nothing mentality where it's like,
so true.
especially in this case, like in our relationship, we've already sinned. So like it's all for naught now, I guess. Right. And that's not the case. Like God, his mercies are new every morning. That path can be well worn every single day. But just knowing deep down that God's heart for you is blessing will make you, I hope, want to keep going back to God and keep going on that well worn path. And so, I would say the exact same thing. Like his mercies are new every single morning. And
And I think especially when it comes to sex, like people want to put a but there.
Yeah.
But like we have to believe in the power of the cross. Like
Mm-hmm.
like God took it. He took sin, and like when you like actually want to live a life after God, like you have to believe that like you're redeemed. It's over.
Yeah.
He took it. It's not yours anymore.
Yeah.
And if both you and your partner are on the same path, like that's something that you guys can take heart in, and you can wake up the next day and think it's a new day. We're doing it God's way, and God, I give this to you.
Well, repentance is turning from your sin.
Exactly.
And the Bible says that God remembers our sins no more. So when you ask for forgiveness, he forgets about it. Like, I feel like we should talk about that more.
Yeah,
God
we should.
forgets our sins,
Yeah.
and then his mercies are new, and then
That's
you
so
just move
cool.
forward in his plan for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think remembering too, like, it's two people. So one person asked that question on behalf of two people.
Yeah. Wow.
And I just think about how life is a series of big changes, little changes, whether positive or negative. So what I would say to that person and other people who are wondering about that is, if you bring up to your significant other that you want to start making changes and putting up boundaries, and they resist that, or at the earliest opportunity try to bend the new boundaries that you put in place, my advice would be to reevaluate that relationship. Just because, and I don't want to seem like super intense about that, but life is filled with so many hard decisions that it's like, if you have somebody who's not going to walk alongside you and support you, that's going to come up hundreds of thousands of different times, not just there.
That's so true.
So I just think that's a really good way of like even subconsciously asking, like, are we a team? Do you support me?
Yeah, no kidding.
Like, I really want this. Do you want this too?
Yeah.
Because I just think, I just know, I don't know. There's just so many things that I'm so glad that Josh like calls me out on things and challenges me to be like the best version of myself. So I just think that that's important to keep in mind. Like you don't want to be with someone who isn't supporting you and lifting you up. So
Well, yeah, when you're diametrically opposed on the big stuff, you're pulling apart already.
Yeah.
So when life
That's
tries
so
to pull you
true.
apart, like how much further can you get?
totally.
And when you're supposed to be journeying in one direction, if you're pulling against each other the whole time, like it's not a journey. It's just a fight.
It's just a fight about everything.
Yeah. Okay, are we ready for the next question?
We sure are.
Yeah. Wow.
Do you think our generation has had proper comprehensive sexual education that prepares us for intimate relationships with our partners?
Oh my gosh. No. No. I don't even know where to begin with that one, but I just think no. Like we were talking about this too, about I think like the public school system as well doesn't have this right, but I also feel like people who have gone to Christian school for middle school or anything like that, I feel like they almost like the sexual health portion was like taken out of a lot of curriculums. I remember that was a big thing. And it's like that, who does that benefit? Like I like genuinely don't understand why that would be something that school boards would decide like is something that needs to happen. It's so weird because it's like kids need to know about anatomy, like simply speaking. And so you're taking out like things that kids need to know.
Well, kids are going to learn about sex regardless of if you tell them or not.
Yeah.
And so whether that's something that happens like at the back of the school grounds, on Google at 11 a.m., like or 11 p.m., they're gonna well, depending on the day, I guess. But like they're going to find a way to get whatever answers they're Googling.
Yeah, exactly.
And so like there's a way to I think take some of the shame and weirdness and stigma around talking about sex.
Yeah.
Because like I feel like just now I'm seeing a movement of people who are like, well, let's reframe this. Let's reclaim sex.
Yeah.
Take it out of this weird like darkness that's kind of shrouded in and mystery and we don't talk about that. Like that's just laced with shame.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, if God created sex, if God looks at us and he calls us good, he made our anatomy. Like, and sex is something that like it's in the Bible. Like if we're not talking about it, what kind of a message are we sending?
Yeah.
And so all these kids who are curious and like going through changes,
which is
like,
also natural to be
so
curious and to
natural.
be interested in what's
Yeah.
happening
Yeah.
to you.
Absolutely.
like let's be the leaders and the people who equip with tools and instruction and sound teaching around
Yeah.
something that is completely natural.
Yeah, that's so true.
And I think that like there's a lot of fear with, and like I worked full time in kids at the church for a couple of years, and I did have like a few conversations with parents whose kids were turning like 11 or 12, and so it's kind of like, okay, and it's such a stressful thing, and I think parents are afraid, and I put myself in their shoes, and I'm like, fast forward 9 or 10 years and I'm gonna be in that situation.
Yeah, that's so true.
And I get scared just thinking about it.
Yeah.
But I just think it's like an area that we just can't let fear rule in. And I think when we don't talk about it with our kids, like I do think parents do have a responsibility, and like youth too, like I think leaders in church have a responsibility to normalize the curiosity a little bit more.
Yes.
Like it's okay to ask questions, because I think if we never talk about it, your kids aren't going to never think about it.
Yeah.
They're just going to go
Yeah.
underground with
thing.
everything.
Yeah.
So that's, I think, where something gets lost, where it's like,
Yeah.
if I don't say anything
Yeah.
and they don't really ask me anything,
Maybe
then
it'll
it must
go
not
away.
be
Yeah.
happening.
Yeah.
But it's like, I just feel like that's straight up denial, because it's like,
totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just feel like more often than not, you're not hearing about it because your kids have taken the message. You haven't said, actually, like, even if you haven't said anything,
Yeah.
if you have been awkward or a little weird about it, I just feel like they've gone underground with it all.
Yeah.
And I just think, it's my personal opinion, is I think it's better to like hear those things from your kids, even if maybe
It's
in some
uncomfortable and
situations it's
awkward, yeah.
uncomfortable. And maybe like when they're in high school, it's going to be things that you're like, wow, I wish I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
Because that's what I think. I'm like, oh my gosh, I can completely relate to the,
Oh my word, yeah.
like, I don't want to talk, but I
Yeah.
do, because I don't want you to hide things from me, and for me to find out like a few years later that all
Yeah.
these things were going on and
Yeah.
you didn't tell me.
Yeah.
Like, I think I want to be like my kids' biggest support, and like someone who will answer their questions even when they're
Yeah.
awkward,
Yeah.
because they're going to feel uncomfortable asking you. So I
Yeah.
think
Yep.
if you respond with like weirdness, what they're going to take from that is like, maybe I shouldn't ask about it. That seems
Yeah.
weird.
That's
So
so true.
either they're going to hide it, or they're going to like feel like it's like icky to think about, and then that
Yeah.
causes icky. Did I just say
Icky to think about.
Well, like kids don't want to make their parents uncomfortable.
Oh my gosh,
Parents,
yeah.
I can only imagine how
Yeah.
hard this is.
Yeah.
So we were kind of talking around like, what are some practical, like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
what advice would you give to parents to opening up that conversation?
Yeah.
And we literally were like, well,
Oh yeah.
why not give your kid like a podcast or like a video and
Oh
say,
yeah, that's so smart.
this is
Yeah.
a conversation that like neither of us are looking forward to, but like
Yeah.
watch this. And then like we're gonna struggle through this together afterwards. But like this is
Yeah.
a conversation I want to have with
Yeah.
you. So if
Yeah.
you actually can't, like, I'm just imagining being a parent and like willing myself to say
to get down to the brass
Oh,
what's
tacks.
the
my gosh.
perfect
Yeah.
moment. Like
Yeah.
there might not be one. So
Yeah.
like just bite the bullet. If you're looking for resources, I mean, we don't have any, but we can probably find you
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
Just to open that conversation,
Yeah.
because saying
Yeah.
something and opening that dialogue, I think is better than saying nothing and just like
Yeah.
letting the chips fall where they may in your kids'
Yeah.
sexual education.
That's
Well,
so
I
true.
think there'd be some power too in just like, well, as church leaders, as parents, I'm not a parent, and I completely agree that it would be so
Yeah, no
shocking and
kidding.
terrifying
Yeah.
to talk to your kids about this. But I feel like
Yeah.
there'd be like some freedom around like determining, what do you believe? Like, what are your values? What's good
Yeah.
about sex aside from it's for marriage? Like, and I feel like
Yeah.
that's just kind of been the church narrative for so long, is sex is amazing, save it for marriage. And that's a great message, but like, could we go a little deeper? Can we talk about it a little bit more? And so it's not just like you're going into this conversation where you're feeling like this whole conversation is going to be why all the reasons you shouldn't have sex.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we can like put a positive spin on it. Like this
Yeah.
is what
Totally.
you know,
That's
like
so
this is
true.
what we believe. This is why sex is good. This is why
Yeah.
God created it.
Yeah.
And just kind of like actually opening, again, it would be awkward, but just opening up the discussion. Like Breanna said, like if there's like a really great podcast, or maybe you can like, if you're a parent and you know your kid's youth leader, maybe you can team up with them and talk about it.
Yeah.
I don't know, like
Yeah,
you want to
no,
be
it's-
strategic
I think
because
it's all of our responsibilities. To
It is.
link
yeah,
ours.
together.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
shade at the any generation that came before us, but it's like, okay, like
It doesn't need to
let's
be
move
awkward.
Yeah.
forward.
Yeah.
We can do this. Let's all do
Yeah.
it together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree.
Like I remember like from a biological standpoint, I was in this class and it was like early adolescence to early adulthood. And so it's just talking about like teaching in middle school, which is just a crazy time of life, truly. But I was just reading it. It was so interesting because I was looking at the different development stages of like an adolescent and like they're going through so much.
Yeah.
Like I actually remember like tearing up, like reading. It's like they're literally developing, oh my gosh, like everything is going on. Your hormones are crazy.
Yeah.
You're also expected to like go to school for 8 hours a day. You have homework after that. They have so much energy. They're expected to sit in the chair for 8 hours. It's just like so crazy. So even like knowing the different stages that your kid is at is so helpful to understand them better as well. And to be able to like have conversations and get on their level. Like I remember looking at it and I was like, I have so much more empathy for people in like grade 7 and 8, grade 6, grade 5. I was like, that's such a like, people say that's like a hard age, but I'm like, of course, yeah, it's hard
Got a
for
lot
you.
going on.
I was like, it's hard for them. Like they're
Yeah.
struggling right now.
Yeah.
So it's like, it was actually so interesting to read about that. And I just feel like we don't understand like what's actually going on like in their body at that
Right.
time, which
We
sounds
just can't wait
super
for them
old.
to get through it. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
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 exactly. Yeah. That's so funny.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so best advice for Christians dating non-Christians.
Okay, I can start this one.
'Kay.
So I think this is a question where I would love to have somebody across the table for me as I'm talking to them, because it's
No
super
kidding.
gray and murky.
Yeah.
I would say it's just that, it's super gray and murky. I think the most important thing for you to be doing when you're looking to be dating someone, when you're in a relationship, is to be connected to God and actually seeking his heart, asking him for wisdom, because I think God is really faithful to give us peace or give us unrest. And I think back on certain situations where I was seeking God's heart for a relationship and I just felt unrest, like just no peace. And that in itself was just kind of my answer. So I think that's something to keep in mind as you're just moving forward in a relationship. Ask God to guide you and trust him that he's going to guide you. Be open to it. When it comes to the person, I think we love to have a blanket rule of date a Christian. Because you want to be on the same path as someone. You want to have the same values. When you really believe in Jesus and in God, it shapes every decision that you make. So you wouldn't want to be married to somebody who doesn't make those decisions based off of that same foundation. But I do think you could be dating somebody who's on the trajectory to find faith and to find God.
Yeah.
And so that's where it does get a little bit murky, and where I would tell you just to lean on God and his guidance.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would just say look for them, that like look to see that they're open to faith, pursuing a relationship with God. In that, that's really hard to explain. Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Well, too,
Yeah.
like I think it gets a little bit. Dating feels more intense already because we know that the intent for dating is to one day walk that path to marriage with somebody else. And so I think so often we can be 10 steps ahead and be like, well, if this person doesn't have the faith that I want to see right now in my future spouse, and we can't get married tomorrow, then like, what am I doing with them? But I also know that just the blanket rule of, do they go to church and have they accepted Jesus? I know a lot of Christians who their life doesn't really scream purpose, and
So
it doesn't
true.
scream faith. And so
Even though they're still
Seeking,
going to church every week.
Yeah.
exactly, or
Yeah.
maybe they're not.
Yeah.
And but like they grew up in a Christian home,
True.
and
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
that's a safe person.
Yeah.
So I
Right.
would say to that, like that's not what I want either. And so I think what you said, you touched on the trajectory of growth. I think I wouldn't personally, like I think that getting married to somebody who has accepted Jesus into their life, made him the Lord and their Savior of their life, that's a value, that's biblical. I think I think it's something that, like, if that's the most important thing in my life, that should be the most important thing in my
so
husband's
true.
life.
Yeah, that's very
But
true.
then when you look at the trajectory of somebody, like, what is dating? Like, is dating like you're getting to know someone on like a really personal level and they're on a trajectory of growth? that humility, that kindness, are they taking steps towards knowing Jesus?
That's very true.
Yeah.
Really good.
And so if it's
Are they
not
open?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's
Are
like,
they
do they
open to
come
it?
from a good Christian home? Like, that doesn't really mean anything. Like, I want to know about their heart. I want to know about their teachability, and I want to know if they're taking steps
That's so true.
towards becoming that person that one day I do want to get married to.
Yeah.
And like even what you talked about too, Tori, before, about how if someone's ever like pressuring you to settle, or like if you're trying to set a standard for yourself and they're trying to bring you down, I feel like that's a very good point to maybe that's not the person for you.
Yeah. That's a good point.
That's great.
Okay, so the next question is thoughts on dating in high school.
That's really hard.
Mm-hmm.
I think that we touched a little bit on dating in high school the last time, because we were sort of talking about, like, we have a lot of different experiences here at the table. Some of us didn't date. I personally did date in high school. And when I look back on it, like, it's just funny because hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah.
So even if I said to whoever asked that, it's dumb, that doesn't mean anything, because you are going through it when you're going through it. And to me at the time, maybe I look back and I'm like, well, those were definitely not the best relationships I ever had in my life. But when I was going through it, that was what I was experiencing at the time. You can't look ahead and be like, I don't know. So
no, I get that.
It's so hard. I think the most important thing is, like, who are you? What's important to you? What kind of person do you want to be? And then I think, like, if you're solid in those things, it'll make it really clear whether, like, you should be with a person or not.
That's very true.
Because I think high school is a great time to figure out yourself and, like, figure out those things that you're passionate about and find, like, great friends. And so I just think dating in high school, like, I think be wise about it if you do it, like, but it's not the most important thing you're going to do in high school. That would be mine.
Yeah,
so true.
I look back on my time and I'm really thankful I didn't date. But the reason I didn't date is because somebody told me that it was dumb. Like, it was just a blanket rule, it's dumb. And so it's like, okay, like, if I need to be serious about my relationship with God, I'm not going to date. But it's like, so that was fear-based and that was rule-based. But that didn't change that. Like, when I look back on that, I know that I changed and I know that I grew in my relationship with God. I'm a completely different person now at 27 than I was at 16. And wow, I am so glad that God has taken me on the journey in the last however many years that is, to where I am now, because I have a better understanding of who I am and who God is. But just the blanket rule of don't date in high school because it's dumb, I think that that's missing the point. And again, it's a rule, but it's not the why, and there's an opportunity there. And so I think, like, always as Christ followers, taking the opportunity to develop as human beings and to grow closer with him, that's your goal.
That's so
and
true.
So anything that holds you back from that, if it's not the right time and you need to grow in that, I would say, like, that's my advice to you. Make that your priority.
Like,
and sorry.
No, go ahead, Leah.
Okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Wow, I was really deep in thought. I was looking over there.
Oh my gosh.
For me, I didn't date in high school either, and it was the same reason as Breanna, just, like, kind of scared. Like, I wasn't allowed also, so it wasn't really a choice. That's fine, whatever. And I'm glad that I didn't date. But if I was to say, and I'm with Tori, like, I don't think that there's a yes or a no answer to whether or not you should date in high school. But I was really thankful that, like, everything that I did in high school was, like, building into things that were going to last.
Definitely.
And I think I fumbled into that. Like, it was an accident, or I was I was following advice, whether it was good advice or bad advice, I don't know. But I built friendships that lasted. I built, like, hobbies and talents. I built into my church. I built into my personality, what I wanted to do for work and school. And, like, I didn't know that was happening. But I feel like you don't really want to think that high school age is intense, and, like, you never want to feel like the decisions you're making are heavy, but it is an important time.
It is
to, like, to start thinking about
formative,
building things that last, and whether that's just friendships or whatever it might be. I think that's something to maybe to factor into. Like, is this relationship something that you think is going to last? Is it? Are you sacrificing something else that you could be building into that's going to last and be important to you? I don't know. That's what I would say.
That's very true. It's good. And like, I personally also dated in high school, and I would say, like, I look back at that time and I regret it personally, because I regret it because I wish that I had invested into, like, who I was as a person. And so it's funny because, like, I graduated and then had, like, a major identity crisis. I was like, who am I? What do I even like? And that, like, really that was just a really tough year of like not knowing who I was, trying to figure out what I wanted to do. Like it was just really tough. And then I think back as like, it's not necessarily like it wasn't this like evil thing and like whatever, but I just wish that I would have invested into myself more, if that makes sense. And it's like focus on you. Like that's a thing that people say, but like I really wish that I had spent that time.
Yeah.
Like
not just a catchphrase.
Yeah, exactly.
Definitely.
And like figuring out what I like to do, figuring out hobbies, like gifts. I don't know. Like there's just so many other things that you can do at that time. And then also like the baggage that broken relationships do bring. Like I spent like that year like recovering from that because I was like ashamed of myself and like was like full of guilt and shame and like all those different things, and that really affected me at like 18, 19, 17. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it does, like, you do have to kind of consider like that your actions do kind of have consequences later in life. So I'm not saying like do or don't, but like I personally for me, like that was my experience when I look back. That's good.
Okay, so our second last question reads, how do I fit in with my friends when they talk about relationships and sex in ways that I disagree with?
I think that the first thing that came to my mind when I read this question is just keep in mind that unsolicited advice, no matter how pure your intentions are, don't go over well. I would say 98% of the time. Like if no one's asking for your opinion, like I don't know if that was the specific, but if that was kind of the heart behind that question, like should I be speaking out? I would say leading by example is a much better way to go about things, and just support. Like if those are friendships that are really important to you and like there's mutual love and trust in those friendships, like love them and try to be there for them. I don't know. It sounds so cliche, but
if you and I, let's say, or you guys, you're talking about your dating relationships, right? And you're talking about sex and or however far you've gone and stuff. If I'm taking this opportunity at every given moment to give you a lecture about like what I believe or like why what you're saying is wrong, that's
you're not going to be a friend anymore.
That's not going to work.
And
like that's actually as a Christian, like that's Jesus didn't lecture people.
it's the wrong way. That's not what he would do
Yeah.
ever. And like, so now you've lost your chance to ever like be there for someone like Jesus would have been there for them. Because now you're the annoying friend. Like, sorry, but you're not going to really like get talked to or invited out very often.
But with that too, we often say like you were this like the sum total in a lot of ways of the 5 people you spend the most time with. And so if you and your decisions in your dating life look a lot different than those 4 other people, like this might be an opportunity for you to surround yourself.
That's so true.
Look
Actually,
for new people
or
or
like-minded people.
like this is what the decision you want to make in the dating world. Well, that's what I want to do too. Like that could be a really lonely feeling if you're like you've newly made this decision and all your other friends are dating like this and this is how you're dating. Like don't lecture them because this is your new way of life. Try to surround yourself too and build formative relationships with people who want to date like you date.
I would say too, like I think the word used was fit in. Like how do I fit in with my friends if I have like different opinions? I do think you should be able to disagree with your friends and still fit in with your friends. And so I think that's on both sides. Like there's a way that you can disagree. Like I can have a different viewpoint than Breanna about something. Doesn't mean we can't be like best friends still. Like that's okay. And I think we live in a culture right now where that's actually in many ways not okay in many arenas. And so I think just knowing you can have your own faith, your own opinions, and your friends can have theirs too, and you can still be friends. And if that's actually a problem in your friendships, then I would kindly suggest maybe reevaluating those, or like Breanna said, getting some other friends that can support you, whether or not they agree with you. I think that's really important too.
That's really true.
Okay, so final question. For each person at the table, what's one thing you wish you knew about marriage, singleness, or dating? Or singleness, marriage, and singleness, dating,
How
and
dare
marriage.
you not say it in the right order? Who wants to start? Emma?
Oh,
I don't know why I picked you. I just looked over at you.
Okay, this was a hard one for me. Like I don't know if I am the same way, but I find it really hard to like look back on my life and try to reflect. I'm terrible at that. But I was thinking, and I was just like, I made a lot. Like I was always stressed out. Like I don't like there's a TikTok and the audio is like, I have never been relaxed ever. And I was like, that's literally me. Like I've just never have been relaxed. And so I just wish that I like calmed down a bit.
Yeah.
And then also just stop. Like I don't know, like the earliest stage of life, you just feel like you need to be on a timeline. And like Maddie's going to touch on that too. But just like, I just felt like I needed to always be somewhere. And like, I wasn't measuring up. Like I was never proud of myself, like ever. And I was so hard on myself. And like in that I would get like shameful, and then you make bad decisions when you feel guilty and you're full of shame. So I just feel like if I had been more proud of myself and been like, you're just figuring stuff out, you're literally like 14, like just chill. Or even like in university when I would lay awake at night going, why haven't I found anyone yet, why haven't I found anyone yet? If I had just like not been so fearful that like the little decisions were going to lead to me living a life alone. Like I remember that was just always a constant fear of mine. And I feel like I wish I could just like tell myself like it's going to be okay. And like you can use that time to invest in your friendships, to invest in yourself, like I talked about, to find things that you are passionate about. Like I feel like I'm just kind of going into a phase of life where I'm learning what I like, what I'm passionate about, and like having conversations with people about it. I don't know. I feel like,
No, that's really good. And like for me, like I also relate to the timeline thing.
Yeah.
And so we touched on it tonight and then also a couple weeks ago, but I've been surrounded by, you have to have a timeline. There's a timeline for dating. There's a timeline for marriage. And Tori, you even touched on it. So big ticket items. And so like when I felt like I wasn't reaching those big ticket items. So then I wasn't succeeding. And then even Emma, when you brought up like there's other things that I'm achieving and other things that I'm doing, but it's so easy to forget those when you're low on the timeline. And so for me, like what I wish I knew is that I would just scrap the timeline, and that's something I'm doing now. And it's just figuring out what I value, taking time for myself. And it's just like, what do I enjoy? What do I value in myself? And what do I value in other people? And just trusting that God's going to bring someone who complements that and values the same things. And so just having a trust in God that will happen. So then there's nothing that I need to do but just work on myself and my relationship with him and enjoy life.
Amen.
Wow.
Yeah, that was amazing.
I love it. Fun. It's amazing.
Should I go? Should we go in a circle?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's fun.
Fun. I think for me, I really would have wanted to just normalize relationships in general. I think it was very polarized for me. So either God is going to send you your husband in a beam of light, and he's going to appear and you will know in that instant that is your husband.
That's so true.
Or the flip side was kind of like, why aren't you dating him? Like you should be dating the first person that asks you out. You should be dating every single person that asks you out. And so, but honestly, And so for me, I would have loved to just know even what a relationship is. Like it's a partnership where you have similar values and you do life together. And so work on yourself, figure out what Maddie was saying, like what are your values? What do you want to accomplish with your life? And then look for someone who might complement that. Instead of like wait for the beam of light or date every single person on your doorstep. Just like this is what a relationship is. No rush. Be looking out for it if you want it, and be working on yourself and thinking about what you want to do with your life and who might work well with you in that. And I would have just loved to hear that. I'm sure I did at some point, maybe. I'm sure I did. It's great.
Okay, mine's super similar, but I feel like I made a lot of decisions early in my dating life or whatever just based on guilt or literally people saying, well, he goes to church, doesn't he? Why did you say no? Like actual conversations, like, well, does he believe in God? Why wouldn't you like him?
Right.
It's like,
Yikes.
and so like I look back on like, I mean, good guys, but dates that I didn't want to go on. And I already knew ahead of time, like this is like, if you know that you don't want to go on a first date with someone, then you're for sure not going to want to go on a third or fifth or 100th date with them. And so I would just say, relax and trust yourself and your relationship with God. Don't make any decisions based on shame or guilt or fear. Just because somebody checks the box off of he goes to church or like prays sometimes, that doesn't mean that he has to be your husband. Like holy relax. And don't let outside pressures like get in the way of who you know you are, what you value, what you find funny, like all that stuff. And don't let that get in the way of your relationship with God, because if you are solid there and you know who you are and you have that identity, like
Yeah.
it's not worth it to settle. It's not worth it to find the first person with a pulse
Yep.
who owns a Bible to marry.
Yeah.
Because
Amen.
life is way too long
Yeah.
to have that.
Yeah.
And
So
really
you're
do
like-
trust yourself. I feel like a lot of our story was like, oh, maybe I shouldn't be trusting myself in this.
Oh
And
my
then-
gosh.
yeah.
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 I'm so over that now. I
Yeah.
wish that I was over that earlier.
Yeah.
Tori,
Tori?
take it away.
I think for me, this is such a hard question,
Mhm.
but kind of what came into my mind is what I wish I knew, or what I wish someone told me, is that the world didn't need me to be another Proverbs 31 woman.
Oh my word.
So Proverbs 31 woman was like a huge thing when I was growing up. I don't
my
know if
goodness.
that's, whenever I say it, I joke about it. Like, I don't think, but anyways, I feel like I always sort of like subconsciously was ashamed about things about myself that now I think are the most important
Yeah.
parts of me.
Wait, you don't make your own bread at
No.
3 a.m.?
You should explain what a
don't.
Proverbs 31 woman is.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So there's a verse in the Bible, or a chapter in the Bible, Proverbs 31. It talks about like basically like an example of a good wife. And it's so like culturally based. Like
Yeah.
it was
Yeah.
written for a specific audience, and it's
Yeah.
very like the woman gets up at 3 a.m. She walks 4,000 miles to the well, and she comes back and she bakes for her family, and her home is filled with, and none of these things are bad. I'm
No.
saying it in like a mocking way, but like I have so much respect for people who like bake their own food. Like
Yeah, yeah,
Josh
yeah.
does all the cooking in our house.
Yeah.
Like I just look back and I just wish I could go back in time and like give teenage me like a hug and like tell her like those things that people are making you feel ashamed of are like the coolest things about you.
That's so true.
So that's kind of, I don't know. I think that there's a lot, like I am a very strong-willed person. Like I am very opinionated. I'm very loud. And I think like those things always made me feel like I wasn't coming close to the mark for so many
Yeah,
things that I
yeah.
should have been. Like this isn't how like a Christian woman talks or acts.
Yeah.
But I've just come to obviously appreciate those things about myself. So yeah, I think that that's what I would tell myself. And that's what I would tell people listening who like, I think that like, don't feel like you need to fit into anybody's molds.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
you. And like
Well,
as
because-
women, yeah,
So the Proverbs 31 thing, that's an example of somebody who
exactly.
is living their life for other people.
Yes.
And it's just examples of sacrifice.
Yeah.
So your examples with your personality and your gift set
Mhm.
are gonna look a lot different than
Yeah.
someone who wakes up, who
Yeah.
loves to wake up at 5 a.m. and
Yeah.
make fresh bread.
But we just celebrate certain things about women and we shy away from other
Yeah.
things about women, and men too. But I think women get it specifically bad,
Yep.
and Christian women get it bad,
Yeah.
where like we're a lot of times
Like
told to
typecasted, yeah.
settle down and like sit nicely
Yep.
and cook for our husbands and care for our children, and those things are important, but
Yes.
those aren't everything.
Yeah.
And like if we dull down ourselves, then like the whole world is missing out, because God didn't shy away
Yep.
from who he made all of us to be.
Exactly.
So obviously he has like a plan in mind.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Wow.
that's what I would say.
I'm amazed by all of you.
So good.
Yeah.
After these,
Amazing.
I'm
That was
fired up.
really good.
Let's do another podcast.
And we'll see
Part
you next
4.
week.
Yeah, literally.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Is that all the questions?
Yeah, that's all.
All right. Well, it's been really fun as always talking with you guys.
Yeah.
I hope that this answered some people's questions. And
Mhm.
again, we want to remind everyone listening that if you have any questions for us or want to reach out, DM Southside Youth
Yeah.
on
that's
Instagram.
awesome.
It's great.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Great, guys.
Bye, guys.